Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. This is going to be Let's Experience the Beginner's Guide. This game is by Davey, Wreden, the same person who made The Stanley Parable, one of my favorite games, and the Beginner's Guide is actually another one of my favorites. It's always been this game that I return to when I think about what games are capable of in terms of what they do for our mentality, our psychology and everything. As you know, this playthrough is going to be a lot about psychology, but I will hand it over to the narrator when he does narrate. This is going to be a longer playthrough, but I think it's really important.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing The Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Wreden. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, you know, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day, he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
So something I really love about this game is the fact that it's all about kind of psychoanalysis. Our job here is to analyze Coda, and immediately we're drawn into this narrative of Davey Wreden knowing this Coda person who makes interesting games, and he's challenging us, inviting us, guiding us to analyze what's going through Coda's mind when it comes to creating these games. How can we tell who a person is from art, whether or not that's, accurate? There's been a lot of interpretations, very interesting interpretations surrounding this game, Coda, Davey Wreden. Where's the fiction? Where does the fiction end? Where does reality start? And leaving all that kind of aside, I'm not going to try and pick apart Coda's psychology or Davey Wreden's psychology. What I'm going to look at is the player's psychology, because in the end, I think that's what this game is really all about. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. We got...
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
Nope. Oh, oh. It's pretty solid level.
Security hull breached. Hostile alien life form inbound.
No.
It kind of looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets.
Creepy.
But ultimately we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is.
See right there,
And I
analysis.
think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
He's setting a lot of kind of basic kind of assumptions that Coda meant for all the games to be exactly as they are, or at least to interpret them that way.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this
Yeah,
room.
that's actually kind of funny. You can also tell that it's a box. That's really funny.
Apparently this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
Oh my god. Did I just get that? Wow. Okay, I haven't played that before. I haven't played the game actually before, so I'm really impressed with myself.
Interesting. The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Okay. Engine room with nothing.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
So you think that this is like an emotional choice where you have something to actually do, but actually the only choice is to either stop playing the game or jump in.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Hello?
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it, like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Okay. Okay, can't move forward. I have seen people play this game before, but it was a long time ago. But I remember I absolutely loved it. The past was behind her. Oh.
Yep, in this game you can only walk backwards. So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Coda's trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
Oh. Oh, okay. But if the future is always behind her, how will she find the strength to confront it.
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't
I
need
like
anything
that.
more than that. Which
I like
to me
games that
is
are
why it works.
like that,
because
yeah.
it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Just a little thought, just a little something. Okay. Oh, yes, that's right. I will... Wait, which way? Okay, this way. I will kind of remember some of these things as I play it, but... Oh, you are now entering.
And that's it.
That's right.
Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
I love the setup of this game and how it's kind of like a museum, a curated experience.
Oftentimes, Coda
Coda
would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games.
I love
I wish
the
I'd known him
feel
at the time
of
that
it.
he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
I love how this game takes games seriously, even though, yes, I don't know if we're actually being encouraged to psychoanalyze artists based off of their games, off of their works. But I
Once
love
you've
that
been
it
slowed
takes
to an
Coda's
absolute
work seriously.
crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens.
Yeah,
So why,
just super
if
cool.
Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
There's a part of me that actually wants to experience this game the way that it was originally intended, but for the sake of time, I use the cheat. Play as a pair of floating eyes. You are a gate. You're in a small room until you realize you can just walk through the walls. Standing on an X, staring at a bear for 3 hours.
And nice.
Sharks are
and
trying to
filled
eat
with
you.
little ideas for
You are
games.
trying to eat the sharks. Press U to surrender. Read an enemy's emails.
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Okay, so we've gotten into the kind of heart of this, of trying to understand Coda as they were inside. You know, as a compassionate, kind person that you needed to kind of get to know. Ready, set, fish. Okay. So yeah, I think this game actually has so much to offer in a way that it takes other games seriously, it takes the creators, the developers seriously. It might overstep some bounds, you know, trying to understand a creator personally.
Well, this is new for Coda. It's an actual puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
But I think it is, there is something to this in a way that it makes us reconsider. Ah, there we go. That's right.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon.
There you go.
We're
There
going
it
to see
is
it
again.
a lot.
It makes us reconsider our thoughts about games. What are games? Do they always have to be fun? Or can they be something that lets us think deeply about ourselves, think deeply about others, to feel connected, or to but to contemplate loneliness or our emotions? You know, to do what...
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor,
Art does
you
for
solve
us,
a
to
puzzle,
do what art
you get
does
to
for
the
us.
end. Simple enough. All right, now I'm going to modify the game again so that when you press enter, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Wow.
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the
Interesting
time you don't get to
interpretation.
know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
It's really interesting. We're being encouraged to really analyze. You're now exiting.
Aha. So, this,
feel what
combined with the entering
the
game from
developer might
earlier,
have felt.
tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some
little
larger
spooky.
meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
So yes, this game is definitely a journey, or this series of games. It's defies definition, but it's going to take a while to really get to the payoff of what this does for us. Oh, interesting. I love these abstract kind of environments that you can make.
Let's talk about video
in a
game
game
development
world.
for a second. Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development. To make all of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
Oh, if I can get my
The
platforming
tools available
skills.
to the creator shape what kinds of
to
creative
work.
work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games, to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
No fall damage. Oh. Wow. This game really makes you think about the entire process, the minds and hearts behind game making, and I don't know, I really appreciate that. Oh, it's just, I wanted to get to that. I think it's just a light. So eerie, but beautiful. Dreamlike. We really, I think society underestimates what games are capable of. Oh. Okay, I'm being corralled. Oh. Oh, that scared me a little bit. Oh, invisible walls, okay. I don't know about, okay.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
You know, I kind of want to experience that, you know.
This is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And
You
I would always
could, you just
defend
have to
that,
be patient.
all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
You know what though? I mean, it is playable. It's still playable. You just have to be really patient and you have to be really invested in what this game is trying to tell you to kind of look at it as a piece of art. But something else that's interesting though is that if Coda existed, if this is real, and Davey Wreden did take these games, then we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. We're getting to see the games and know what the intention was for the experience so that we can kind of imagine it while not actually having to wait. So they're both playable, but still kind of true. True to how they were.
It's the puzzle again, with the exact same solution as the last time. There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over. But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
The feeling that this game kind of evokes is just so meticulously eerie and makes me reflect on myself a lot. It really encourages thinking. Oh, you there? Did you come from
Coda
above?
begins using a
What was
kind
up
of
there?
dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat
Stamped
capabilities.
with whiteness.
Use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on your keyboard to respond.
Enormous prison. If I had played that. That's the world above. You've been there. Now this is important. Did you have to get through a puzzle with 2 doors and switches? Yes, I did. That was literally the last thing I did before coming here. Again, perfect. Now please, tell us how you solved it. Tell us the solution. Tell us how to get to the other side. I don't remember. I didn't solve it. Trust me, you don't want to go over there. No, they might want to go over there. I did solve it. Well, these are all lies, but that's the least, I guess. You must think harder, please. Try hard to remember. It is so important that we get out of here. We must escape this prison. Can you think harder? There must be something more. Please tell us how to reach the end. The end. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm just... Oh. Immediate. Okay. Oh. How did you get there? Was there a puzzle you had to pass through? Well, not right now, but still, you want to know about the puzzle? We actually find the black space between the doors to be far more interesting. Have you seen it yet? Why would I care about the space between the doors? I remember feeling strange as I passed through it. It was kind of strange. Don't think too hard about it. Oh, you'll see it again soon. Okay, that's surprisingly eerie. Surprisingly, wow. This game is such an experience. I really recommend it.
And so we make one last descent down to the final floor of the level.
Oh.
It's a
Interesting.
lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason Coda fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out. I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're going to see it in the work as well. His games are just going to become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Okay. So actually, I am going to pause it here for this episode, just because I know we barely got into it, and I really didn't get into any research. I know I really didn't get into any research this time. I might have added something to the bottom. However, I think that's because this game deserves a full playthrough. It needs to be seen completely, piece by piece. It needs to be felt and kind of once you get closer to the end, it becomes a lot more clear what this game does to us. But so far, I think it's really done something for my mood. If I'm doing a little bit of self-analysis, I would say that I came into this game feeling a lot more rooted in the present moment, whereas now I'm leaving it and I'm kind of still flowing through these eudaimonic thoughts about myself and my mind and Coda's mind and psychology, and that's good for a while, but just like Davey Wreden just said, you know, you can only stay in that headspace for so long. So now it's actually time for me to get a balance back, to go back to something that's a little bit more in the moment, a little less existential. So thank you so much for joining me, and as always, thank you for watching and happy playing.